The Ohio State Buckeyes moving to the top of Dennis Dodd's power rankings after blowing out Iowa 54-10. Georgia dropping to 2 during their bye week. TCU remaining in the top 5 after the victory over Kansas State. Clemson right behind them. So 6 unbeatens, all of them in the Power 5. Let's get Dennis Dodd in here for more on his power rankings, starting at the top with the Buckeyes, who continue to just eviscerate opponents. Does Penn State stand a chance this week?
I think they stand a chance. I just checked the weather. Obviously in State College, you always check the weather first. Cloudy, 57 degrees. So not really something that can hamper Ohio State. But yeah, they traditionally play them close up there. The problem is this is a vintage Ohio State team. It's the best one they've had since 2019, since they got upset in the semifinals of the CFP. They think they're good. They know they're good. C.J. Stroud leads the country in pass touchdowns, 28. We know that. They have their margin of victory, which is 34 per game, is higher than 100 teams have averaged offensively in games. So, yeah, the defense will hold them down a little bit, but there's so much depth. Travion Henderson, Mayan Williams in the backfield, the best receiver room in the country. And the defense, you saw it Saturday against an Iowa team, Chris, that was obviously handicapped offensively, shut them down for 10 points and no offensive touchdowns. But it's going to have to be Sean Clifford again playing the game of his life. Penn State is moving the 5-star freshman Drew Aller in there a little bit. But I think the feeling there is he should have had a lot more time to get ready for Ohio State. So they expect this 5-star freshman to come in and save them, sort of like a J.J. McCarthy last year with Michigan. It's not going to happen.
That Ohio State offense is something else. You're right. C.J. Stroud, the Heisman favorite, and has been since the season began. Is it his to lose at this point? And how would he go about losing that outside of maybe a head-to-head loss against a Michigan?
Yeah, no, I think so. I think it's his to lose. I mean, look, a lot of people like Hendon Hooker right now, but we're going to find out about Hendon Hooker. They play Kentucky this week. They're at Georgia on November 5th. They're going to have to play in an SEC championship game. And obviously, you love his numbers. Hendon Hooker, 71 total touchdown passes, I think 11 interceptions in his career. But C.J. Stroud, even though with the fumble Saturday, the scoop and score for Iowa has been incredibly efficient, even better than last year. And remember, he was a finalist for the Heisman in his first year as a starter at Ohio State. So it would take somewhat of a collapse for Ohio State not to win the Big Ten for him not to win the Heisman.
Georgia dropped to number 2. They did not play last week. They have the tougher portion of their schedule coming up. And you can include Florida in that, whether you want to or not. I mean, they're in there as one of the tougher teams on the schedule before that game against Tennessee, which you're going to be at. But it is a rivalry game this week, and they are 3 touchdown favorites, are the Bulldogs.
Yeah, look, that's about right. I think that's going to happen. Georgia's had a week to rest, so has Florida. So they should go in fresh. But Georgia has too many weapons. We keep talking about the defense. It's top 10 this year instead of the best, in the last 10 or 20 years. Still really, really good. And Florida, I think with their quarterback could give them a game. He came up and threw for 453 yards earlier in the season when he absolutely had to at home. They beat Utah, which is a feather in their cap, but this isn't a fully formed Florida team yet, Chris. I think everybody knows that. And playing in a game where Georgia has so much at stake, I think it's going to be hard. Florida doesn't run the ball very well. All the running they're going to have to get from their quarterback, it looks like, and defensively they've shown some holes too. So, yeah, Georgia's been game planning for this game since about February. This is like playing Alabama. Kirby leaves no stone unturned. You should see Georgia roll. It is a rivalry game, but you should expect Georgia to roll.
And then Tennessee, Mississippi State, Kentucky. So the schedule getting tougher for Georgia. It has not been that tough since the opener against Oregon. Speaking of Oregon, let's go to the Pac-12. You've got 4 teams in the Pac-12 bunched together between 8 and 12. I don't know if you've looked at the schedule, but these teams don't play each other at all over the next 3 weeks. And for the most part, they're all heavy favorites. So they may all end up in the top 10 in late November as potential playoff teams. How do you separate the 4?
Well, for the sake of the conference, they've got to separate themselves. They have to hope that somebody goes 12-1 out of that group. Right now, Oregon is the only undefeated team in conference after that fine performance against UCLA on Saturday. They're 4-0. Everybody else has at least one loss, including Utah. Don't forget them at 5-2 and 3-1. But you mentioned the 3-week thing. USC and UCLA still have to play each other at the end of the season. Oregon and Utah still have to play each other, and out of that, you're going to have some separation. The loser's going to have a second loss, or at least one loss in the conference if it's Oregon, and that it looks like from here, it looks like that eliminates the Pac-12 from the playoff. Now there's 6 unbeaten teams left, Chris. The most we can have is 4, because Georgia, Tennessee are going to play each other, and Michigan, Ohio State are going to play each other. That's the most we can have. So if they all go undefeated, Clemson's in there and TCU's in there, if you believe all 4 are going to go undefeated, then automatically the Pac-12 is shut out. So they've got to develop depth in that league and someone to emerge. The problem is, for years, since about 2016, when they last went to the playoff, everybody in the league has had 2 losses. So they were an afterthought for writers, for media, for TV in the last month of the season.
That big week you mentioned is November the 19th. USC plays UCLA. Oregon hosts Utah on the same day. You do your power rankings. You go to 25. Let's talk about 3 teams who were in there to start the season and are in there no longer. Texas, Texas A&M, and Miami. All 3 of those have a lot in common. Major programs, big brands, lots of NIL money. Why hasn't it worked for any one of those 3 teams this season?
Well, first of all, you can throw as much money as you want via NIL and benefit and contracts. Mario Cristobal has an $80 million contract in Miami. We know about Jimbo Fisher. He's got a 10-year deal there. You know what you can't account for, Chris, is 18 to 22-year-olds on Saturday. And Miami comes out and turns it over 8 times in that game and loses big time in a game they weren't supposed to lose. That's the most turnovers by a Power 5 since 2009. Nebraska had 8 in 2009. Texas A&M's had problems all year with injuries offensively. They come out and go to South Carolina and lose not convincingly, but a game they were supposed to win. And now they're under 500 for the first time since 2017. How does that look for the people that funded that contract? And then Texas was looking pretty good going into Saturday. They were 5-2. They'd lost 2 games by a total of 4 points. One of them to Alabama, which was very credible. One of them to Texas Tech. And then they go to Oklahoma State, and they're leading at halftime and lose the game 41-34, mostly because Quinn Ewers threw 3 interceptions, big NIL guy, right? And Texas commits 14 penalties to none for Oklahoma State. So you can give all the money you want to these kids in benefits. You still don't know how they're going to play on Saturday.
And really, they should have lost that game the week prior against Iowa State as well. They tried to lose that. Iowa State ended up giving it to them. Dennis Dodd with us here. You can see his power rankings at CBSSports.com. And you can get the very latest in everything college football from the Cover 3 crew. Latest episode recapping Saturday, as we are now getting close to...
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.